birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Any excuse for a creepy old kitty record. Now, it's not the day. That's April 30th.
Walpurgisnacht.
Yes, we're celebrating a bit earlier because this is our only April show.
That's the day back in 2018 Bone and Sickle was born.
8 years ago.
So happy birthday to us and to all of you who've been listening all these years.
Well, it's not really their birthday, but sure.
And we have cake.
That voice, by the way, since we didn't have our usual intro, that's Mrs. Carswell. She runs the house and co-hosts this show with me, Al Ridenauer.
You never say your name.
I used to in the older, longer intro. I should probably start doing it again.
You should.
And I'm the author of The Krampus and the Old Dark Christmas, which is why some of you may have started listening, and more recently, another book about folk celebrations, A Season of Madness, about European carnival customs.
We should post a photo of the birthday cake.
I could on Patreon.
I didn't make it myself, but they did a decent job.
Mrs. Carswell usually makes a kind of honey spice cake from her own honey.
We just didn't have anything to harvest this year with all
I know.
And don't blame the bees. You know it was the house's fault. Bees can't make honey in a basement.
Not proper honey, I guess.
You should just throw that stuff away.
The point is, without getting into it all, it's that we put it behind us by finally cleaning up the basement.
I know. We'd been talking about it since November.
But it's a new start, a new year for the show.
Yes. And you do like the cake, right?
Sure.
They didn't know what a sickle was, but I showed them a picture.
I wouldn't have used a skull.
You mean for bone?
I mean, it is a bone, but it's mainly a skull. I would have used a femur. And that's a beehive at the bottom?
Yes, I didn't tell them they had to add that, but I guess I talked a lot about bees while I was there, and anyway, you said you liked it.
It's nice to have a cake, and we've also got birthday wishes.
Do you want to read those now?
Yeah.
Okay, so, Dennis Bradshaw wrote, "Happy birthday to Bone and Sickle. Let the old celebrations continue."
Oh, I see what he did there.
Taz Ainsworth sends his wishes and calls Bone and Sickle the crown jewel of his podcast list. MR says, "Listen to every episode multiple times. Keep up the excellent storytelling." Urspo says, "Perkta and Krampus hoist you up high and hip, hip, hooray."
Oh, thank you, Dennis, MR and Urspo. And there were a couple other Krampus or German-styled greetings. Russell Everett wished Bone and Sickle herzlichen Glückwunsch zum Geburtstag, happy birthday, and talked about here in our very first episode while walking his dog Satchmo on a soggy spring morning 8 years ago. And we have Ann Knight, who wished us alles Gute zum Geburtstag, happy birthday, and said that the show had been a healing bloodletting and a balm of Gilead to our own troubled times.
I like that.
Yes, and Alison Murray also wrote something somewhat similar. She commented on meeting me in London when I gave a talk at the Last Tuesday Society and wrote that Bone and Sickle was a guide, inspiration, and source of comfort during COVID, if you're the sort who's comforted by plague diaries and plague doctors.
Our listeners are special like that.
Yes, and we very much appreciate your well wishes, and I believe all those listeners were also Patreon members, which makes it all even lovelier.
Yes, thank you.
Now, I do have a question, not exactly a criticism, but a serious question about the cake.
Oh no, it's about the bees. I was waiting for this.
So that is what those are, the shiny little black things coming out of the hive?
Yes, I did it. And I was going to tell you because you shouldn't eat them.
They're real bees, dead bees, aren't they?
Candied bees. I still wouldn't eat them, but I thought dipping them in boiled sugar would be a good way to preserve them and make it more hygienic.
Dead bees from the basement.
I'll take them off right now. Like I said,
No, not before a picture.
Maybe we should just start the show.
And cake later, okay?
Okay. And cake later.
This is episode 160, Trolls in Medieval Literature. You're hearing a traditional song from the Faroe Islands, telling the story of Saint Olaf battling trolls on the coast of Norway. While the ballad presumably originated in Norway, it was first recorded by the Danish priest and historian Anders Sørensen Vedel in his 1591 publication Hundredvisebogen, the Book of 100 Ballads. The protagonist, Olaf Haraldsson, or Olaf II, ruled Norway from 1015 to 1028 and was canonized in 1164. Olaf I had encouraged early efforts of Christian missionaries from Britain, but Olaf II completed this transformation, aggressively pursuing the goal with the same vigor he'd shown as a Viking raider before his personal conversion. The saint's iconography retained something of this character, representing him as a red-bearded warrior king armed with an axe, coincidentally the instrument of his own martyrdom. He's also often depicted with a slain dragon, symbolizing his victory over paganism. The ballad we're hearing also mentions his snakja, literally snake or Viking-style longboat, to which he'd given the name ox, as mentioned in the verse. The ballad in Norwegian is called The Trolls of Mount Hornalondum, the name for a seaside cliff which he approaches in his longboat. Then he spots the first of the creatures who have been terrorizing the region. The first troll is described in an 1860 translation of the 16th century ballad in Richard Chandler Alexander's Ancient Danish Ballads.
His eyes were like two burning pyres, and yawning his mouth to shout. His fingernails were hooked and long like a goat's horns hanging out. A beard he had like a horse's mane that hung to touch his knee. His body was long and shagged with hair, and fearful his claws to see.
Intending to pluck Olaf's longboat from the water, the giant meets with misfortune.
The ox he seized by his horn and stem, and thought he'd have crushed with ease. But into a cliff he sank himself, down over both his knees.
Turned to stone, that is, the fate of trolls touched by sunlight, as you heard in our last episode, or when confronted by holy men like Olaf, who calls out at the troll,
"Hold thy peace, thou baleful beast, and there as a rock remain. For never till doomsday hurt shalt thou a Christian man again." Outran from a cavern an aged hag, and yelled with a voice so shrill, and looked so grim as she hobbled along, he bade the old crone be still.
And smaller trolls emerge from seaside caverns, only to meet the same fate.
But turned were they to shapeless blocks, their necks to their body pressed, their backs all broken to pieces small, and heads crushed into their breast.
Legend has it that the warrior saint marked his victory by planting his axe at the top of Mount Hornalondum. Ambitious modern hikers can retrace those steps up the 860-foot-high peak, the highest seaside cliff in Europe, by following what's called the Olafsrute, the Olaf's route, to the top. Along the way, you'd see the Hexavägen, the Witch's Wall, which may be more related to other Hornalund legends, those of witches' Sabbaths held on the mountaintop in midsummer or Christmas Eve, or witches stopping on the Hornalund on the way to the Walpurgisnacht gatherings on the Blocksberg in Germany. The enmity between trolls and the church, and their dislike of church bells and fear of crosses, is a theme sprinkled throughout Scandinavian literature. We'll next look at an interesting case from Iceland. It was collected by the Grimm of Iceland, as he's called, Jón Árnason, a librarian and museum curator who published several collections of folk tales beginning in 1852. This one's from his second volume of Icelandic Folktales, published in 1864.
In the east of Iceland, a bay runs into the land between two steep mountains, which is called Mjørfjörður. In one of the mountains is a deep, rocky gulf inhabited by a troll, who used to draw into her power by magic spells the priests living nearby. She was wont, while the priest was preaching, to lay one of her hands upon the window over the pulpit in church. As soon as the strange hand prevented the light from falling on the paper on which the sermon was written, the priests became mad and used to cry out to the congregation, "Take my bowels out, for I must be off to the Gulf of Mjørfjörður." With these words, the priests disappeared from the church in the direction of the Gulf and were never heard of again. A traveler, happening to pass the Gulf, once saw the troll sitting on a ledge of rock, kicking her heels and holding something in her hand. He said to her, "Well, old hag, what have you got there?"
"Oh,"
replied the other,
"I am gnawing the last piece of the skull of Snooki, your late priest."
Eventually, a particularly brave priest takes over the parish and devises a response plan should the light from the window or his demeanor in the pulpit unexpectedly change. And when it does,
the 6 men whom he had previously selected seized him and held him back. 6 others rang the bells with all their might, and the remaining 10 ran to the door and set their backs against it. When the troll heard the bells ring, she took to her heels and jumped from the church onto the wall of the churchyard,
leaving behind a crack visible to this day. And in her haste to escape,
the troll's iron shoe, which had tumbled off and was used by a farmer for an ash scuttle.
I'd like to think that's in a collection somewhere. In our last episode, we noticed how trolls often possess magical assets like swords or ointments, or might work magic on humans, threaten to turn them into this thing or that. This trait becomes more pronounced as we go further back in history. The Norwegian word for sorcery is connected to trolls, trolldom, and the same applies with cognates in Danish, Swedish, and Icelandic, all coming from the Old Norse. With the arrival of Christianity in the 11th century, trolldom was subject to legal prosecution, and the Norwegian Landslov, national law of 1274, criminalized conjuring with trolls, specifically the nocturnal custom of
sitting outside to awaken trolls.
Rather than a race into which a creature is born, in a number of tales, humans could become trolls through the enchantments of other trolls. In the older sagas, we'll be hearing a lot about female trolls called troll wives, who often appear as intimidatingly large and grotesque sort of witch, basically. As we also saw previously, the form trolls can take is quite fluid, evidenced by the worm-like boy Peer Gynt recognizes as a troll, and they're particularly often equated with giants, with the word jötun, giant, and troll often used to describe the same character in the same text. The Old Norse word Thors is also sometimes retained in modern texts, as is Risi, related to the modern German word Riese for giant, and all of these may shade into the concept of troll once again, emphasizing a point I know I've made more than once in the show, that tight categorization of folkloric beings really only applies in Dungeons and Dragons. In this episode, we're going to look at an earlier kind of troll, 4 stories all written in the Middle Ages in Iceland, though some incorporate characters hailing from Denmark or Norway. These Viking Age trolls are quite distinct from the less intimidating, bumbling figures of the 19th century Norwegian folktales that we previously heard. They're more vividly and gruesomely described, which is particularly the case with the troll women. So these would be the trolls of the Icelandic saga, epic stories written in Old Norse and relating the adventures of clan heroes or rulers, usually with some connection to history, but also certain creative embellishments. A subset of the sagas, which takes place in its own mythic timeline, the Fornaldarsogur, were simply written with entertainment in mind and more oriented towards magic and folklore and trolls, so we'll take a look at a couple of those. And then there is the Thatra, a sort of short story, sometimes folded into sagas, but often reproduced independently. Our next story is one of those medieval short stories, the Thatra of Thorstein Oxleg. It takes place in 10th century Norway and seems to have been written during the 14th or early 15th century. While it's sometimes incorporated into the Olaf saga, it's known as a Thatra that comes particularly close to delivering what's expected of later short stories. Well, that's what scholars say, but I'd say it's more of a horror movie. Anyway, we'll be using a version produced by British translator William Craig in his 1896 compilation called Scandinavian Folklore. He entitles the story,
The Trolls in the Haidar Woods.
It begins with King Olaf I getting word that a particular region of the Haidar Woods is dangerously troll-infested. A party of 60 men is dispatched, but soon only 4 return, saying all the rest have been slaughtered. Thorstein Oxleg steps up, offering to travel to the haunted woods with his comrade Stikar of Yimsar. Soon after setting up camp the first night,
Thorstein went in search of water, with the pitchers in one hand and a spear in the other. As he came near the water, he saw a girl with pitchers. She was not very tall, but fearfully stout. On seeing Thorstein, she threw down the pitchers and ran off. He also threw down his and ran after her.
Then
They came in sight of a house, very big and strongly built. Into this the girl ran, slamming the door behind her, whereupon Thorstein threw his spear with such force that it went through the door. He entered the house and found his spear lying on the floor, but no traces of his girl. He went still farther in, till he came to a bed closet where light was burning, and there he saw a woman lying in the bed, if woman she could be called. She was both tall and stout, with strong features, and a color both black and blue, in every way like a troll. She lay in a silken shirt, which looked as if it had been washed in human blood. The witch was sound asleep and snored terribly loud. Above her hung a shield and a sword. Thorstein stood up on the bedstock, took down the sword, and drew it. Then he lifted the clothes off the hag and saw that she was all covered with hair, except a single bare spot under her left arm. Judging that the iron would bite on either there or nowhere, he set the sword's point on that spot and leaned upon the hilt. It went right through her, so that the point of it pierced the bed.
she staggers from the bed and collapses, apparently dead. Thorstein pulls loose his sword and continues his exploration of the house, stopping before a partially opened door where
he saw a big man with strong features sitting on a bench with all his war gear hanging above him. On one side of him sat a big woman, very ugly but not very old, and 2 boys were playing on the floor.
the troll woman turns out to be the daughter of the male named Ironshield. He tells the boys to check on their mother, Skjaldor, whom he presumes to be sleeping. But the daughter warns that it's unwise
to send young creatures out into the dark. For I can tell you that I saw 2 men running down from the fell this evening who were so fleet of foot that I think there are a few of our people who could match them.
Ironshield says he's not concerned about humans unless King Olaf has sent Thorstein Oxleg, who apparently has quite a reputation. The eavesdropping Oxleg clears away as the boys, followed by their sister, exit to check on Skjaldor. On reaching the mother's darkened chamber, the sister stumbles over the corpse of the troll wife. She flees, but
Thorstein came up and cut off her hand with a sword. She had, however, a short sword in her hand and fought with that for a time, until she fell dead. At that moment, Ironshield came out with a drawn sword in his hand, so bright and sharp that Thorstein thought he had never seen the like. He immediately struck at Thorstein, who had tried to avoid the blow, but was wounded in the thigh. The sword ran into the ground up to the hilt, and as Ironshield bent down, Thorstein raised his sword and hewed at him, striking him on the shoulder and taking off both the arm and leg. Ironshield fell with that, and Thorstein let little time elapse between his blows until he had hewed off his head. After this, he again entered the house, but before he was aware of it, he was suddenly seized and thrown down. This, he found, was the old hag, Skjaldor, now far more difficult to deal with than before. She crouched down over Thorstein, trying to bite his throat asunder.
at the brink of death, Thorstein's mind races to
King Olaf and of the faith that he preached.
and he vows to serve the Christian God should he survive.
Then, as the hag tried to fix her teeth on his throat, a ray of exceeding brightness came into the house and fell right into her eyes. At this, all strength and power forsook her. She began to gasp hideously, and then vomit sprang out of her and down over Thorstein's face, so that he was nearly killed with the evil smell that came from it.
All this while, Stiaka has been waiting back at their encampment, but he's soon attacked by the two troll brothers, whom he dispatches without much ado. And,
Suspecting then what was detaining Thorstein, he went on till he came to the house, and found the two trolls lying dead there, but no signs of Thorstein. Entering the house, he found him lying under Skjaldor, whom he pulled off him, and then Thorstein rose up, though he was very stiff after all the struggles he had had with the trolls, and the embraces of Skjaldor. They broke the old hag's neck, though that was not so easy, for her neck was terribly thick. Then they dragged together all the trolls, kindled a balefire, and burned them to ashes.
our next tale, the Itle saga, was written sometime before the 16th century in Icelandic and in Old Norse. It's Icelandic, but is named for a Viking hero from Denmark who leaves the Danish court, adventuring into some unspecified northern region where adventure awaits. For this one, we'll be using a 2015 translation by Philip Lavender of the Viking Society for Northern Research, a scholarly organization founded in London back in 1892. Like all modern translations, it's rendered in an unadorned style, often switching from past into present tense. Stylistic choices more reflective of the original text, if a little strange to the ear. It begins with Itli and his comrades Sigurd and Bjorn sailing back from raids in Scotland and Orkney. They're blown off course, arrive on an unknown shore, and Itli volunteers to go searching for fire. He spies a cave and enters. We're told that
a troll wife by the name of Grithor ruled over it.
soon he hears
Heavy footsteps, and Grithor comes home. She asked after his name, and he says that he is called Itli. It seemed to him as if hail or sleet blew out of her nostrils. Snot hung down over her mouth. She had a bushy beard and bald head with a bizarre headdress. Her hands were like eagle's talons, and both burnt, and the smock which she was wearing did not reach down further than her buttocks at the back, but all the way down to her toes in the front. Her eyes were green, and her forehead corpse blue. Her ears dangled down over her cheeks. Who would call her pretty? Itli said that he would like to get some fire from her.
You'll get no fire here unless you speak 3 truths. And if you do that quickly, then you will sleep with my daughter this night. If you don't want to accept that offer, then I couldn't care less if Bjorn freezes to death.
Itli says that he wants that. After that, there steps forward a woman so beautiful that Itli thinks that he has never seen anyone more so, and he immediately falls deeply in love with her. She was quiet and taciturn. Itli then began to speak. It must be time for me to speak the truths. Your cave is so high and broad that I have not seen another higher or more sturdy. Also, the nose on your face is so large, I have never seen a greater freak. You are moreover so black that the floor looks fair beside you, and I have seen nobody else who looks more like a wretched servant than you do. Your daughter definitely looks better to me. I can see a great difference between you two, and that's what everyone who looks upon you will say. Gridur spoke.
It is quite clear,
She said,
that you want neither to praise nor to flatter me. But now I think it is advisable that you head to bed with my daughter and do whatever takes your fancy, because she is more to your liking than I am.
Itli takes her up on the offer, but the daughter seems uninterested.
Grithor grabs him by the hair and pulls him forward. With the other hand, she drew a glinting and extremely sharp sword and aimed it at his head. But Itli lay still and did not flinch. Grithor then spoke angrily.
Listen to me, you wicked spawn of Satan. Did you think I would put up with you shaming my daughter? No!
She said.
You'll get death instead.
Itli spoke. My heart has never yet been afraid, and thus I came to this place because fate intended that it should be so. Nobody dies more than once, and I am not frightened by your threats.
This cycle repeats 3 times until Grita suddenly changes her tune, saying,
You aren't like other men. Your veins never quiver. Now you shall be granted your life, and I give to you my daughter, who is called Hildur. And will I never be able to repay the good deed you have done, because you have delivered me from a terrible curse? I have killed 16 brave fellows with this short sword, and such is not a woman's work. Now, I'll tell you my life story.
As it turns out, Grita is actually a beautiful princess by the name of Sieni, cursed by a wicked stepmother to become a troll and live in a cave with her daughter, who is likewise transformed and destined to cause men to fall in love with her. And those men are destined to be slain by the mother. The stepmother adds to this curse, telling Signy she will
have 7 sisters, all of whom are my daughters. They shall engage in battle with you every night. They shall cut you all into pieces and mutilate you, but you will never die, because you will never be freed from this curse until you meet a man who does not fear your terrifying short sword when you swing it at him.
And after all of this is related, right on cue,
7 hags with sharp, short swords came into the cave and ran towards Grethor and strike at her vigorously and repeatedly. Eatley then takes his sword and slashes at the hags and doesn't stop until he has killed all of them and burns them afterwards on a large pyre.
There's a bit more. Eatley and his men are rewarded with treasures from the trolls' hoard, and Signy accompanies them back to Denmark to be married. Not to Eatley, turns out, but to a friend, though he is a king. In our next Icelandic story, you'll notice some similar themes. It's the saga of Grim Shaggy Cheek and takes place in 8th century Norway in the north, and was written sometime during the 14th century. We're using a more modern translation provided by Peter Tunstall. First, about that name.
He was called Shaggy Cheek because one of his cheeks was covered in dark hair, and he was born like that. No iron could cut him there.
Grimm wants to marry a woman from the south by the name of Lothtina, so he sails there to ask for her hand. It's all arranged, but on the eve of the wedding, she disappears. There follows a flashback in which we learn how Lothtina came to have an evil stepmother, which will come into play soon. Later, a famine forces Grimm to sail north to a more promising fishing area. Overnight, however, the fish disappear, it grows cold, and the winds die out, so he can't sail out of the bay. He decides to camp on the beach.
In the night, Grimm wakes to hear laughter right outside the hut. But when he came out, he saw 2 troll women down by the boat, tugging one at either end of it, and they seemed to set on shaking it to pieces.
Grimm fires off some arrows, killing one of the trolls, probably thanks to them being magic arrows, an element from an earlier story. But then the other troll
wades up to Grimm, so he hacks at her with the axe, and it hit her on her shoulder blade. She gave a yelp and raced in along the beach. Grimm lost his grip on the axe, and it stuck fast in the wound. Grimm gave chase. He couldn't catch her, but neither did she manage to shake him, and so it went on till they came to some big cliffs.
She races up to a cave in the cliff.
And as she leapt up into the cliff, the axe slipped out of the wound.
Grimm uses it to scale the cliff face, arriving at the cave and pausing at the entrance.
He saw a bright fire burning there, and 2 old trolls sat by the fire, a male and a female, with the soles of their feet touching. They were both dressed in short smocks made of shriveled skins. He couldn't help seeing what they each had between their legs.
The troll he'd been chasing, actually a young daughter of the family, enters and informs the parents that her sister is dead. Then she
got faint from loss of blood and also fell down dead. That instant, Grimm stepped into the cave and hacked so hard at the father troll that he took his head off. Then the troll wife jumped up and ran at him, and they wrestled hard and long, for she was a big, huge troll, and Grimm a powerful man.
But eventually he succeeds, managing to
cut off her head, leaving her dead there. He went back to his shack on the shore.
The next morning, he's delighted to discover a dead whale washed up on the beach. But as he's making plans to bring it home, a group of locals arrive to contest his claim. They're led by Heda the Rash, who rashly battles Grimm for rights to the whale. He's killed, but
Grimm fell too from wounds and weariness. He lay there now among the dead on the beach, expecting nothing but death. But he'd not been lying there long when he saw a woman coming, if you could call her a woman. She was the height of a young girl, but so fat Grimm doubted he could have got his arms around her. She was long-faced, hard-faced, hook-nosed, with hunched-up shoulders, black-faced and wobbly-jowled, filthy-faced and bald at the front. Both hair and hide of her were black. She wore a shriveled leather smock. It barely reached down to her buttocks. Hardly kissable, he thought, as she had snot dangling down in front of her mouth.
unfortunately, kissing is exactly what she has in mind. Suspecting as much, but realizing he needs her help to survive, Grimm agrees to go to her cave.
She snatched him up under her smock and ran with him like a baby, and so hard the wind filled it.
Then, as soon as they arrive...
Now, I want you to pay me back for saving you and bringing you off the beach. So kiss me.
Well, I'll just have to do it then, said Grimm, though I'd really rather not. So he went to her and kissed her. She didn't seem as bad to touch as she was to look at.
Come evening, the troll makes up her bed, suggesting that Grimm had better share it if he wants healing. He hesitantly agrees.
First, she bound all his wounds, and he felt neither pain nor burning. He was amazed at how soft-fingered she was, how gentle, with such ugly hands as she seemed to have, which looked to him more like vulture's claws than human hands. And the moment they were in bed, Grimm slept. But when he wakes, he saw such a beautiful woman lying beside him. He could hardly remember seeing anyone so pretty. He was surprised at how much she looked like Loftina, his betrothed. Down on the floor at the foot of the bed, he saw that hideous troll husk she'd worn. He got up quickly and dragged the husk into the fire and burnt it to ashes.
As it turns out, Loftina had been abducted on the eve of the wedding by that wicked stepmother who also cursed her to take the form of a troll.
Unless some human man agrees to these 3 things when you ask him. This is the first, to let you save his life. The second, to kiss you. And this, the third, to sleep in the same bed as you.
And so this is how Grimm retrieved his bride. They're married, and it's happily ever after, despite evil stepmothers. Our final Old Norse story is that of Orm Sturluson, or Orm the Strong. Craigie retells this one, also in his Scandinavian folklore, under the title
The Giant on Suevi.
Rather than Orm himself, the story begins with his comrade, a Danish Viking by the name of
Osbjørn, surnamed the Proud. It was the custom at that time for women called volvur to go about the country and foretell men their fate, and the kind of season it would be, and other things they wished to know.
During the fortune-telling, Asbjørn is warned never to visit a region in Norway known as North Møre. However, North Møre happens to be home to his mother's family, and while staying with him there,
he became friendly with an Icelander named Orm, a man of immense strength, and the two swore to each other foster brothership after the old fashion, promising that if either of them was slain, the longest liver would avenge him.
Vikings, of course, don't like to be told what to do, so in the summer, Asbjørn invites Orm to visit him on an adventure in North Møre, or on an island off its coast, Søði,
over which ruled a giant named Brusi, who was a great troll and man-eater. It was thought that he could not be overcome by mortal men, however many there were, But his mother was still worse to deal with, and that was a coal-black cat as big as the biggest ox. Those on the mainland could get no good of either of the islands for these monsters.
What could go wrong? Orm does manage to dissuade him, but 2 years later, when Orm is away visiting family in Iceland, Asbjørn heads straight for Søði. He brings along a crew of 23 men, sets up camp on the shore, but then decides to venture deeper into the island all by himself, thanks to his death wish, I guess.
Not long after he had left them, they discovered that a fearsome cat stood at the tent door, coal-black in hue and fearfully grim, for fire seemed to burn from her nostrils and mouth, and her eyes were fierce and cruel. At this sight they were greatly astonished and terrified. When the cat sprang in upon them and seized one after the other, some she devoured, and some she tore to death with her teeth and claws. 20 men she killed there in a little while, and only 3 escaped to the ship and immediately put off from the shore.
Naturally, Asbjørn discovers a cave. You know how these stories go.
He could not see clearly, and the first thing he knew, he was caught up and thrown down with a force that astonished him. When he saw that the giant had come upon him and was of a huge size.
Very eager were you to visit me here,
Said Brucey.
and now you will accomplish your errand, for you shall perish here with such torments as will hinder other men from coming to assail me.
With that, he stripped Asbjørn of his clothes, for he was so much stronger than he might do with him as he pleased. After this, he put him to death in a most horrible fashion, while Asbjørn repeated verses recalling his old exploits and companions, and looking to Orm to revenge him.
This recitation is in verse in the original Old Norse, and there's something that I'm missing in the translations I have access to, but some scholars say that
Most horrible death.
reference involves the giant extracting a hank of Asbjørn's intestines, fixing it to an iron pillar, and causing him to walk in circles, thereby literally unwinding his bowels, which would be most horrible. Anyway, when word of the atrocity reaches Orm, he makes for the island, and upon arrival,
Spent the night there. As he slept, a woman came to him and said that she had the same father as Brucey, but her mother was of mortal birth. She told him all about Asbjørn's death, and how Brucey was afraid of his coming, and had closed the mouth of his cave with a rock that no man could move. To remove this, she gave him a pair of gloves.
magic gloves, presumably.
When Orm awoke, he found the gloves beside him, and by means of these he was able to remove the stone and to kill first the cat and then the giant, whom he tortured by cutting the blood eagle on him. After that, he burned the bodies of both and carried off from the cave 2 chests full of gold and silver. The rest he left to Brucey's sister.
What's the blood eagle? Some of you may ask, while others certainly know and are shuddering over the idea. It may be worse than walking off your own intestines. The blood eagle is mentioned a handful of times in medieval Norse literature and is supposed to be a form of ritual execution in which the victim, tied in a prone position, has his ribs cut away from his spine with an axe or any other handy implement, and then his lungs are pulled up and back through the cavity and displayed as a pair of bloody eagle wings. Maybe. This blood eagle is a subject of fierce scholarly debate, some claiming it was an actual practice, others that it's merely a literary invention, and others that it's simply a mistranslation or misunderstanding. But it's still going to be stuck in your mind's eye.
Fjall og skeier blonda
So, as a palate cleanser, a lighter note on which to end, we'll close as we opened with a song from the Faroe Islands. It's called Trøllini Trampa, Troll's Tramp. It's not an ancient ballad, but rendered as a folk song and released in 1985 by the Faroese band Speilemennina, which means the players or folk musicians. The lyrics describe trolls coming down from the mountains when the clouds roll in and sheep lie down to sleep. A time when the trolls dance and stamp and fight and laugh.
Until morning light, when rooster sings, when the sun rises from the sea.
And so on, and on, like this.
Og trøllene dansa og høyta kampe, trampa vi tromsande trampe, og trampa så tromsande tramp, tramp, tramp.